Ladies and gentlemen, it's lightning round. It is Kevin Tompkins. It is Britt Flinn. No Andrew Cooper. Andrew Cooper. Him and his wife had their baby girl in the last couple of days. So Andrew Cooper will not be joining us. But you know what? Me and Britt can certainly fly and land this plane. And today we have a great co-pilot with us, Mr. Pat Fitzmaurice of Fantasy Pros. Pat, friend of the show, fellow Packer fan, comrade in drafting wide receivers. How are you, my friend?
Doing great, Kevin. Great to join you and Britt. Great to see you guys again. And man, I feel like I'm really under the gun doing the tight end show in place of Coop, like the world's foremost authority on fantasy tight ends.
No pressure.
None at all, man. Wow. Talk about big shoes to fill. But seriously, congrats to Coop and his wife on the birth of their child. And yeah, great to be filling. Miss him, but great to be filling in for him.
Yeah, I think I saw on Twitter, he said, "How am I missing the tight end show with Pat?"
Yeah, the big no.
But I have been incessantly, probably annoyingly messaging him for daily updates on their sweet baby. And she's adorable. So yes. he deserves some time off to spend with that sweet angel.
Yeah. Rest up, Dad. We did the Pros vs. Joe's draft last night without the services of one Andrew Cooper, who I know he's been maybe a little bit against taking some of the elite tight ends, but we did start Kelsey Mahomes. So we did draft a good team for little Laney J. Cooper out there. So rest up, Dad. We will see you either next week or the week after. Take as much time as you need. But for now, we've been doing quarterbacks. We did running backs. We did wide receivers. Last and obviously certainly not least is the ever important tight end position. Pat, just to start it off here. So how are you approaching tight ends in your drafts? I know the always present battle between elite tight ends or not even touching the early and the middle and kind of just waiting to grab a few late ones. Like, where are you on the tight end spectrum as far as drafting the position?
I've kind of been all over the place, Kevin. Like I know, Travis Kelce is getting his due this year, even as he's getting older. But I mean, so far we've seen no signs of slippage whatsoever, even as he, gets pretty well into his 30s, continues to be just a rock as far as durability. Like I've got him 6th overall, and he just doesn't slide out of the back half of the first round that often. So it's weird. Like there's a pretty small needle to thread there as far as me actually getting him. But I did take him in the first round of an FSGA draft last week. I think the value on Mark Andrews is kind of fair in the maybe early 3rd round. I've gotten him in a couple of drafts, but I've also had drafts where I've taken some of the mid-round guys, really just a couple who I care for. And I'm perfectly comfortable dumpster diving at the position if, I'm pounding wide receiver and running back early.
That's kind of where I'm at. I feel like if I don't get Kelce or Andrews, that I'm kind of just punting down until Waller or Freiermuth. And if I don't get one of those two guys, then I'm punting even further for some of these high upside guys. I don't think people have talked enough about Greg Dulcich, and especially with the news that came out yesterday with Tim Patrick being out for the year, them releasing KJ Hamler. Everyone's like, well, which wide receiver is going to get the role? Is it going to be Marvin Mims? He already has a big, he's wide receiver 3. But I think people are really avoiding the real possibility that Dulcich could be top 2 on that team in targets. And so I'm very willing to go, like you said, dumpster diving at the position if I miss out on some of those high-end guys. Sellers, you and I are going to have a discussion about this when you get home. That's my husband, for anybody who doesn't know. We have very spirited discussions about tight ends and his takes.
Yeah, I love the Dulcich call, by the way. I mean, I've slid him up to tight end 11 or whatever. And I'd much rather have him than, say, Dalton Kincaid. Maybe people are kind of holding it against him that he didn't play a full season last year and just doesn't have the full season numbers. But man, when he got in there, there was an immediate impact. And now hopefully this offense is going to be running a lot more smoothly under Sean Payton. So, I do think the Patrick injury might funnel a few targets his way. So that's a really good call.
Yeah, I think that whole dichotomy is interesting. You know what they don't tell you? I mean, we all want to talk about how old Travis Kelce is, and he's 33 years old. Every single tight end, we're all getting older by the minute, by the day. So you know what? I'm totally fine with Travis Kelce. It seems like the story every year with how everybody around Travis Kelce. I mean, last year, obviously, not going to have Tyreek Hill, so they had to kind of figure it out. They ended up signing MVS and brought in, Justin Watson, all these guys, and it was still kind of murky. Juju Smith-Schuster they brought in as well. Now we're looking at that with, possibly year 2 Sky Moore. Now we're looking at Rashee Rice, Richie James. I think it's very interesting to kind of everybody wants to parse out who's going to be the wide receiver 2. And better than me, Pat, better than anybody, Pat, making a wide receiver 2 in Green Bay. Like that, how long do we do that for with, God, just names upon names. I don't even want to touch that. Geronimo Allison and MVS. And yeah, so trust me, I'm far too old to, want to deal with that anymore. I'm just, I will take Travis Kelce at cost, who I am perfectly fine with. And, in tight end premium, bump him up even more. I think he's in that top 3. I have no problem with Kelce there, but I think where the real discussion lies with these elite tight ends is how people are going to parse out Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson. And I'm fully in on TJ Hawkinson as well. I'm with you, sellers, just because of how concentrated that offense is. Now, Pat, do you feel like Hawkinson is closer to the Kittle, Goddard, Waller, Pitts tier, or do you feel like he might be maybe not quite Mark Andrews, but maybe closer to that tier?
Yeah, he is kind of in a weird purgatory, I think, between those 2 levels. And I don't think he's quite on Andrew's tier, but I do think he's like a tick above those other guys. And by the way, Kev, thanks for bringing up Geronimo Allison's name for like the first. I hadn't thought about that guy in 2 years. I thought he was out of my life, and then you had to go and bring him back.
Rip off the Band-Aid.
So yeah, it's funny. I haven't gotten Hawkinson in any drafts, I don't think, this year. And it's not because I'm like going out of my way to avoid him. It's just that he's going at a point in drafts where there are just a lot of running backs and wide receivers I like. And I'm just generally not in the tight end frame of mind at the point where Hawkinson usually goes in drafts, if that makes sense. But I do think he's a fair value. And it was pretty interesting to see how his usage spiked immediately upon arrival in Minnesota last year. Like he was definitely, getting a workout as far as targets go. I do wonder if maybe Jordan Addison changes that a little bit. Like if Addison commands, I don't know if he's going to command more targets than Adam Thielen, but I don't know. I wonder if he's still going to be used quite as heavily and get as many like double-digit target games as we saw him get last year.
That was exactly my thought last night when we were drafting that FFPC team. I'm all about the training camp hype, and I think that Addison has already developed a relationship with Kirk Cousins, and his route running is so smooth that I wonder if Hawkinson's target share is going to fall. The thing that does go in his favor is, of course, the subtraction of Dalvin Cook. A lot of those short targets are probably going to go to him. I'm still not sold on Alexander Mattison being that every down back with such a small sample size. And if he's not that pass catching guy, then we could see those targets go to Hawkinson. But I am concerned about Addison eating into that target share.
That's a good point about the running backs. Like maybe if Ty Chandler turns into Naheem Hines, then that also threatens Hawkinson's target share a little bit. But it's possible that without Cook around, Hawkinson doesn't really lose anything, even with Addison's arrival.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at 8.5 targets per game since when Hawkinson got to Minnesota. We're looking at about 22% target share. I am totally fine if he can stay above that 20% range, and just knowing how condensed that offense is with Jefferson, with Addison, and with Hawkinson. I think there's room for all 3 of those guys. Like, we know that Minnesota, it's a Kevin O'Connell trait, really doesn't use much personnel after like their starters. Like, to give some context, after Thielen, Osborne, and Jefferson last year, the next highest route runner in terms of raw number of routes was Rager, and I think he had 57 total routes for the season. Then they used Johnny Munt solely on blocking. They just do not use those guys. The guys that are going to be out there are going to be out there. So we can certainly cement Hawkinson into a 90% snap share, probably the same, close to that in a route share. I think that's what you want. And then you're talking about they don't have a defense right now. They got rid of Dalvin Cook. I think the stars are aligning right now for Minnesota to be like that perfect storm of a fantasy, just a land or like just the Scrooge McDuck diving into a pool of gold coins where everybody is going to be able to eat as long as they're on the field. So I'm totally in on that passing offense. I'm drafting them everywhere I can, any of those options. But Hawkinson, the fact that you can start him at tight end, I mean, that kind of bumps him up over Addison, but I do love me some Addison. He's been like my one flag plant of this offseason and getting into the preseason here. Let's talk some more about these. It's pretty much Kelsey and Andrews, I guess, is like the sub tier, and then Hawkinson kind of in his own murky second, third tier, however you want it. But Kittle, Pitts, and Goddard, I think there's the most fluctuation with value depending on the draft that you're in. I'm very intrigued by how we're going to be attacking him. And we know Kyle Pitts had a 1,000-yard season, age 21. Dallas Goedert in a condensed, efficient offense himself. Kittle, maybe the better and best ball pick with the spike weeks. And he's kind of been hard to start the last year or so. So how are you parsing out at least that tier? Is that like maybe I'm going to take a hands-off approach, Pat, unless they fall? It's very interesting because usually you don't have as many questions at the top of the tight end tier where it really drops off, but it seemed more gradual this year.
Yeah, I'm pretty much fading everyone in that tier except Pitts, and I would even include Waller in that group. Sorry, Britt.
Yeah.
With Waller, I mean, he's entering his age 31 season, and he's missed, I think, 14 games the last 2 years. And, I know he had those back-to-back 1,100-yard seasons in 2019 and 2020, but those are starting to get pretty small in the rearview mirror. And part of it, I think, part of the allure with Waller is that the Giants have this confusing amalgam of wide receivers, and seemingly every slot receiver who's ever walked the face of the earth wound up on the Giants roster this offseason. But look, I mean, the Giants were 27th in the league in passing yardage last year, and that was with everyone perceiving Daniel Jones to have a good year. And it was a good year, mainly because he was running a lot and, dialing way, way back on the turnovers. But it's just not like a prolific passing offense, and I don't know if it becomes that just because Darren Waller is there. I do think he's a big injury risk. But as for Pitts, I mean, the reason I believe is, hey, he was the first rookie tight end to have 1,000-yard season since Mike Ditka 60 years earlier. Yeah. We saw, we've seen the numbers that he had just this outrageously high percentage of uncatchable targets last year, and he got hurt. And anyone who says anything good about Kyle Pitts on Twitter gets bashed. I can't believe you guys are trying to sell us on Kyle Pitts again. Well, I mean, the guy's really good. The guy was just an absolute college freak. And, until Brock Bowers comes out of college next year, I mean, Pitts will have been the best tight end prospect to come out since I don't know who.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm still in. And even though it's the Falcons, and yes, they're going to be super run heavy, and yes, it's the unproven Desmond Ridder at quarterback, it's still a pretty skinny target tree there with basically just Pitts and London. And I think there's enough for both of those guys to eat.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the Twitter hate for Kyle Pitts, because that one training camp highlight yesterday where he dropped the ball, people played that and retweeted it over and over and over again, when the fact was that Ridder went 8 of 9 in that entire series, and that ball was actually thrown a little bit behind Pitts, and it wasn't his fault that he didn't catch that ball. I think that Ridder is really developing in his second season. They're becoming more comfortable with the offense. And I think that if Kyle Pitts would have been uninjured and on the field last season when Ritter actually came in, that we would have seen a little bit of that uptick, because we already did see it with Drake London. So I'm in on Pitts. I'm willing to take him at ADP. I understand your concerns about Waller. I will fully admit that, because whereas Travis Kelce has seemingly avoided that age apex drop off, Waller hasn't. And that's apparently why the Raiders wanted to trade him, was because of injury concerns. And when a front office is concerned about injury, that should be one of the biggest red flags that you have. What I will say with Waller is that I'm willing to take him and then kind of go dumpster diving again for another high upside guy to kind of plug and play if and when Waller does get injured. But with this elephant graveyard of slot receivers, I don't see anybody really emerging as a wide receiver one on this offense. I know Jalen Hyatt's running 24 miles an hour, which is awesome, but is he really going to be able to differentiate himself from the rest of the pack? I mean, Jamison Crowder was out there making training camp highlights yesterday, for God's sakes. Like, that's how bad it is in New York.
Yeah. I think the best quote I saw about those Giants wide, I think it was Pat Thorman, who called it a slot Voltron. You just combine them all up and, let whatever happens happen. But yeah, I mean, clearly the market thinks that Darren Waller is going to be the top pass catcher in that offense. I mean, just looking at the ADPs and then looking at the ADPs of the wide receivers, where they're all going in like the same spot, especially on Underdog, where you can have your pick of all of those guys late in like the 16th, 17th, 18th round. So it's really kind of a choose your own adventure with those guys. But, first and foremost is Waller. I think that it's kind of a risky proposition, but I'm still willing to bet on Waller just being head and shoulders above everybody else. Wan'Dale Robinson might not even start the season. He would probably be the one guy that I feel like can challenge him in terms of actual just like raw targets and target share. But until he actually gets on the field, I think it's going to be Waller and the rest. Kittle is very hard to click out of all these elite tight ends. Kittle is the hardest one to click, just because we know, I mean, Purdy's going to be there, but there's so many weapons out there, CMC, Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, that, where's Kittle going to fit with that group? I mean, at best might be like the third, maybe even second target, but at worst he could be the fourth target and just kind of he's going to be like no better than tight end 12 most weeks, because the Duke can just get a touchdown. And then looking, Pitts, you will never have to twist my arm to draft Kyle Pitts. Can it really get worse? I mean, from Marcus Mariota, that's kind of what I see with that. I know they drafted Bijan. I know they drafted Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse on the offensive line. They're telling us what they want to do, but God, if they get any kind of uptick in efficiency on that offense, I think it's going to be great for Kyle Pitts and London, which, yeah, to your point, Pat, absolutely condensed offense. I mean, we're talking about Cordero Patterson being, a wide receiver again, potentially. And, they kind of got to figure it out from there. I mean, I'm not exactly believing in Scotty Miller here in 2023, the year of our Lord. Can
I piggyback on something Mr. Scampers just said in his comment below? And he corrected himself. He meant Waller and not Walker. Like, that is interesting. Like, it is a bunch of Lilliputians at wide receiver for the Giants, except for Isaiah Hodgins. And there were moments last year where I just watched Giants games and I'd be like, is this guy actually good? Like, I think he might actually be a pretty good wide receiver. And if Hodgins kind of steps to the forefront at wide receiver for the Giants, then maybe Waller's size becomes sort of less advantageous, and he's not the only game in town inside the 10-yard line. You know what I mean? So, like, I feel like how real Isaiah Hodgins turns out to be might have some bearing on how Darren Waller does this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's their only profilable, like, X receiver, so to speak. So I think that gives them kind of that safety of at least having a guy that can put on the line of scrimmage, compared to everybody else. And I mean, let's face it, last year they were pretty much running open tryouts in the regular season with Marcus Johnson and David Sills, and then Sterling Shepard got hurt. Kenny Galladay kind of got phased out. Then they ended up getting, I believe Buffalo released Hodgins. Giants got him on waivers in like week 4 or 5. Richie James came on, and they ended up, obviously toward the end of the season, they got their 3 with Slayton, Hodgins, and Richie James. So, it's very interesting. They might be doing that again because, we know with those Giants wide receivers, it's going to be very interesting who is going to be starting week 1 and where. But the one question we do not have is Darren Waller, as long as he is healthy. So, yeah, I mean, how much of an uptick are we really expecting with the passing game and, really the target share compared to all these other guys? Because those wide receivers could just cannibalize each other out, and then Darren Waller just kind of stands literally and figuratively above the rest. Sorry, go ahead, Britt.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I think that you're right, and I like the Hodgins call. He's still currently listed as wide receiver 1 on the depth chart, which I mean tells you going into camp that they see something in him that they like. I'm just buying more into the hype that Waller is apparently the only guy that Jones throws to, and they had to take him off the field just so he would spread the ball around to other receivers. So I think that the target share and the connection's there. It's just going to be a matter of him staying healthy.
Yep, absolutely. And then moving on to some of the next tight ends in the group, because we've got, Evan Engram, who had a great season last year, David Njoku, Pat Freiermuth, the aforementioned Greg Dulcich from earlier in the show, kind of rounding out that top 12. Dalton Kincaid we can throw in there too, but I do kind of want to talk about him separately from the tight ends we just listed. So I know the prices are a lot better, Pat, with those tight ends, specifically Engram going, about 8th round or so, where you can get him, and then kind of Njoku, Pat Freiermuth, and Dulcich a little bit later than that. But if I'm going to be grabbing a tight end that I maybe want to anchor and I miss out on the elite guys, like that tight end group is very attractive. And I know that's kind of been the tight end dead zone in previous years, but I think just now that we have a wide receiver dead zone, now that we have running backs being pushed down just across like general ADP, I think it's made these tight ends a little bit more attractive than in recent years.
Yeah, I'm with you, Kevin. I mean, like if I don't get Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, I'm usually shopping in this range. And yeah, kind of a tight end dead zone historically. But on the other hand, we're talking about guys who are going here in the 8th, 9th, 10th round. So yeah, and I should probably make an attempt to get back on Britt's good side since I got on her naughty list with my Darren Waller slander, but I heard her mention
never be on my naughty list.
Oh, thanks, Britt. But yeah, I heard you mention Pat Freiermuth earlier as one of your favorites, and he's been one of my targets, I guess, after those other top guys are no longer around. I like the fact that in his first 2 years, he's had 60 or more grabs, catching passes from rookie Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, ultra dusty Ben Roethlisberger. Look at this. Oh,
yo,
man.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, your AOL dial-up is coming in swimmingly.
Yes, dude. I'm at the hospital in Boston, but I couldn't let you guys talk tight ends to my favorite fantasy analyst, Pat Fitz, without me coming in and say, so what's up, guys?
Cool.
What's up, man? How's Kate? How's little Laney J doing?
I don't know. I'm talking to you guys about football. I'm kidding. They are doing great. Her mom's actually here visiting right now, so it's perfect timing for me to sneak away and say, what's up?
Yeah, man. Glad
but
you
yeah,
could hop back
they're
on.
doing great. Baby's healthy, mama's healthy, and probably going home tomorrow. So nice. Good stuff.
You don't look too sleep deprived, Coop.
I was just going to ask, how much sleep are you on right now? And
yeah, I'm good, man. We got a good rotation going here. The thing is, it's easy at the hospital, apparently, when you get home and you don't have people like bringing you pudding and stuff all the time and like coming to like wrap up your baby. Apparently it gets harder, but for the time being, it's great, dude.
Yeah, get that swaddling thing down, man. That's key. You got to do the tight fold or they'll wiggle out so fast it'll make your head spin.
Oh, I'm already real nice at it, dude. You can call me Jalen Swaddle, bro.
You're like a Jalen Swaddle. That's awesome. Love it.
Yeah, real tight, dude. Tight swaddle, hold her like a football, man. I was born for this. Look at this, got the classic hospital stuff just kind of floating around here.
They don't let you take that home though.
Nah, you can't have those. But anyway, man, just wanted to say what's up, dude. And I've been listening, and I will continue to be listening. But I couldn't let you guys do tight ends and talk to Pat without me saying hey. So cheers, guys.
Appreciate you,
Cheers.
brother.
Give that baby and Kate a kiss for me.
I will. Say something nice about Dalton Kincaid, would you? All right, I'll catch you.
Later, buddy. I will just say, since he mentioned him, I like Dalton Kincaid's price a little bit more now that he's going around cheaper on underdog. But sorry to interrupt, Pat. I know you're talking about.
No. I mean, like, when the man comes on and pops in, like, we've got to talk to him, of course.
I mean, Jalen Swaddle. I mean, that's perfect.
I thought I was in an alternate universe for a second. Like, he's already reached peak dad joke, and the baby is 3 days old.
Oh, kidding. He just slid into that role perfectly, didn't he? Oh, yeah. So we were on Freiermuth, and I like him, the fact that he's been able to, I think his target share was like around 18% last year. Not bad. I think he's had one of only like 6 tight ends with 30 or more red zone targets the last 2 years. I believe Alex Caruso tweeted that out a day or two ago. So yeah, I mean, like I believe in the player. I'm up here in Big Ten country and saw him play at Penn State and thought he was pretty terrific there. So I think he's like gives you the combination of, well, I know the floor is pretty safe with Freiermuth. Like, you're not going to feel bad about starting him as long as he's healthy. I don't know if he gives you that starry ceiling that you'd like from a tight end, but, as long as the floor is safe, I think you can live with him as your tight end one.
And talking about rookie tight ends, people forget how good his rookie season was until he went out with a couple of concussions. I mean, he was Roethlisberger's like go-to. And the thing about Freiermuth is that his usage in red zone and 2-minute drills is insane. They rely on that guy super heavily in those situations. And especially, we say it all the time with rookie quarterbacks, with younger quarterbacks, the tight ends, especially good ones, are their best friends. And that's exactly where Freiermuth fits in. And I would wager to say that he actually has a higher ceiling than a bunch of the guys in this range. With Calvin Ridley coming into Jacksonville, I think he's got a bit of a higher ceiling week to week than Evan Ingram does. Elijah Moore coming into Cleveland kind of, negates some of Njoku's upside. So I really, really do like Freiermuth in this situation. And as long as he can keep from getting concussions again, which have admittedly been freak accidents and taken him out, but I mean, it's a concussion. It's not like a soft tissue injury that should come back. I think that he's going to have a really good season.
I'm glad you brought that up, Britt. Like, the concussion thing is the one thing that could, poke holes in my safe floor comments. I mean, like, we shouldn't we shouldn't cherry pick and say that Tua is a big health risk. And, even though the concussions weren't quite as scary as Tua's, at least certainly not as scary as the one. But yeah, like that is the one risk, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Freiermuth, like just looking around the tight end landscape, like around him and the offensive situations, like now Jacksonville adds Calvin Ridley, that kind of takes those guys down a peg a little bit. So Ingram, the top two kind of that doesn't really work there because you're still having to compete with Christian Kirk for that. Zay Jones had a pretty good year last year as well. So even though it's an ascending offense and they are condensed to a point, I still don't think it's the greatest bet to be making when he's going ahead of all those guys that we just talked about. Njoku, Britt pretty much mentioned that with Elijah Moore, Murray Cooper, those guys, and they could be still run heavy. So Freiermuth has like the best price, and he reminds me a lot of his dad, Heath Miller. I mean, pretty much when you're looking at how the Pittsburgh Steelers tight end in fantasy has really fared, he reminds me a lot of Heath Miller, where you're going to get, some spike weeks. He's not going to be like an overall top 4 option, but he's going to at least keep you afloat. And, I think there's something to that, especially in the tight end position where if you're not taking an elite guy, you're hoping the guy that you are starting is getting in the end zone. And I think Freiermuth can certainly do that and then some. And then we got to hope that, Pickett can lift up this offense in year 2 as well. So clearly has the weapons to do it. I'm fully in on Freiermuth at cost. And then Dulcich, that's kind of the profile where Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, the high A-dot, guys that can get into the slot. With Tim Patrick out now, it's certainly, obviously a tough situation there. But, with the Denver Broncos, I think that solidifies Cortland Sutton. Obviously, I think Judy's been solidified. But other than that, now that they got rid of KJ Hamler, it's Mims, it's Dulcich. I think the bet is a little bit thinner for top 2 with Denver. But now there are adults in the room compared to last year with Nathaniel Hackett and Justin Outen. So I love the profile, and I will bet on that. It's probably the top 2 thing. And then, that's a big Andrew Cooper-ism, and throw that on the bingo card. Can they be a top 2 player in that offense? And then the next guy we did want to kind of save that as his own discussion is Dalton Kincaid with Buffalo. Going at tight end 12 now, ADP of 130 on Underdog. So you're looking at about end of the 10th and the 11th or 11th-ish round. I don't know. He has been one of my fades for most of the offseason just because I don't know. I don't quite believe in he's going to jump immediately into the slot. I do understand the late round upside with that. His price is going down on Underdog, and maybe in like season long redraft kind of stuff. He seems like a guy that if people have questions on him, he's going to fall. And, people see Dawson Knox there and then go, well, where's he going to fit in? Just because he has a TE next to his name. So, Pat, where are you on Dalton Kincaid as far as at least just immediate kind of upside, and are you with it as far as late round or late season upside, I should say?
So here I am, Kevin, trying to fill the Shaquille O'Neal sized shoes of Andrew Cooper, and now I'm gonna besmirch one of his favorite tight ends here with Dalton Kincaid. We know that rookie first round tight ends are just bad percentile plays from a fantasy point. And I can even quantify that. It's 16%. That's the rate. We've seen 25 tight ends drafted in the first round since the year 2000. And exactly 4 of them have given us tight end 1 seasons. It was Kyle Pitts, Evan Engram, Jeremy Shockey, and then your boy, Pat Freiermuth's dad, Keith Miller. So those are the 4 who've turned in tight end 1 seasons as rookie tight ends since 2000. Man, and I know the camp reports have already been glowing, although I think they just put pads on for the first time yesterday. So I think we should probably take those with a grain of salt. I also kind of like Khalil Shakir. I liked him coming out of college and thought he was like this just gamer overachiever at Boise State, and would like to think that he's going to be someone they want to use in the slot quite often this year. And, Dawson Knox is still around. So I'm a little concerned that, I think Kincaid's good. I think he'll develop into a guy who we are drafting as a tight end 1 eventually. I just it's so rare to see those guys do it right away. And, I'm kind of betting against it this year. I don't want to bet on the outlier. And if I do want to bet on a rookie tight end, I think I'd rather wait, 2.5 rounds and get Sam Laporta, who, was the only point of light on just a sinkhole of an Iowa offense last year. And, who I know the Fantasy Pros college football expert and draft analyst Thor Nystrom absolutely loves. Thor's biased. He went to grad school in Iowa, but he's been singing the praises of Sam Laporta. And I think if I can get him a little cheaper than Dalton Kincaid, I think I'd rather go that route.
And Shane Zylstra, it came out today, suffered a serious injury that's going to keep him out for at least 6 months, they're saying. So I think any questions that were there about Laporta and his role on this offense have been basically erased by that injury. But I will go back to Kincaid and say that the fact that the Bills traded up for him when they already had Dawson Knox under a fairly hefty contract, the fact that they didn't really go out and get a legitimate wide receiver 2 aside from Gabe Davis, the fact that we have seen him doing all these reps in camp, I think that they have a real pass catching role in mind for him. And I think that they're going to develop this offense around him. The thing about rookie tight ends that people don't often think about is that they're usually asked to go into a blocking role. They're not immediately in that pass catching role. And that's where the differentiation comes in with these top 4 that you mentioned. I think that Kincaid could do that Kyle Pitts, very consolidated target share, high ADOT. What he did at Utah was absolutely incredible. If he does get those targets and that target share, I think that he's very well in the tight end 1 consideration. But it admittedly is a risk, but I have so much faith in his talent and in that system that I think it's going to work.
Yeah, just to go back a little bit to the Thor Nystrom, yeah, he got Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid in our Scott Fishbowl draft live in Minneapolis. So sat next to him and Tyler Forness. Very interesting that, Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid went to Thor. So certainly in on at least both those. But yeah, the point remains, I would much rather have Sam Laporta later. It's really a cost thing for Dalton Kincaid, but I will say one of my favorite points of analysis, and I use that kind of loosely with Dalton Kincaid, is when somebody, I believe on the Draft Network, called him tight end Cole Beasley, which, look, I think that's a very lofty expectation for Dalton Kincaid, and I don't want to bet on the outlier, as you said, Pat, but look, if he can pull off this year, if he can pull off, 80, 90 targets, like, I will be banging the drum hard for Dalton Kincaid a year 2. Granted, he's probably going to be more of like a 4th or 5th round pick at that point, but I'll bite that bullet. I just don't want to take it this year at a relatively inflated price. So yeah.
But then
Plus,
all of us who got him in Dynasty are going to be doing a little celebration.
Plus, Kevin, I know Kincaid is typically going around the 10th, 11th round turn, and that's usually the point in drafts where you're saying, oh man, I don't have a running back yet. I should probably draft one.
Yeah, it's about that. Look, I like to think that I've grown in the past year or so, where I actually am taking more running backs. In my underdogs, I haven't really done a lot of like pure zero RB. So I have taken some early running backs. I've taken a couple. I haven't waited to the 10th, 11th that much in a lot of leagues. I was drafting Zach Charbonnet. Like, that's like been my guy in that range. But now with the shoulder injury, I think it's a kind of a dicey proposition, at least right now, because that seems like the more serious injury of the running backs in Seattle with Ken Walker and Charbonnet. So yeah, it really has to go with like the range of, and that's another reason why I'm not drafting Kittle that much, is because where he's going, I would much rather make sure my wide receivers are good. If I'm drafting a elite tight end, if I want to take a stab on a profile at running back that maybe falls, or because I'm drafting quite a bit of like Cam Akers and James Conner, and like being able, because those aren't profiles that you're normally getting. At least in previous years, those guys would typically be 3rd and 4th round picks. Now we can get those guys in like the 6th or 7th. It's great. That's why I haven't done a lot of pure zero starts. But yeah, I mean, that's why I'm not drafting Kittle. It's really not why I'm drafting a lot of Kincaid either, but that's really because I like Sam Laporta a little more. And now that we're outside of the top 12 as far as talking about this position, like, who are some guys, Pat, that you are drafting the most of? Obviously when we're outside of the top 12, we're getting into the Dalton Schultz, we're getting into the Tyler Higbees, Cole Kmet's, the aforementioned Laporta, Chikakonkwo, Gerald Everett. Like, who are some guys that you are, kind of just hammering at cost here outside of the top 12?
There are 3 in particular who interest me. 2 of them are in New England.
Yeah.
I'm interested in both Gesicki and Henry, and now it's just a matter of which one I should be more interested in. Initially, it was Gesicki because, I mean, the Dolphins gave him the franchise tag last year and then just proceeded to marginalize him. But before that, 73 catch, 780 yard season in 2021, one of the most athletic tight ends in the league. And, I like the fact that he's now being reunited with Bill O'Brien, his old college coach at Penn State. Just seems like that's a good fit for him. But then again, the early reports out of Patriots camp say that Hunter Henry is like by far Mac Jones's favorite target in the early going. So maybe I have to flip-flop those 2 in my rankings. I've moved them close together where they're now basically like side by side. And, usually if one gets drafted, yeah, as Chris pointed out, Henry's apparently having just a fabulous camp. But maybe there's room for both of them to eat. I mean, okay, the Henry-Gesicki combo is not exactly Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, but I will point out that the last time Bill O'Brien was calling plays for the Patriots, Gronk and Hernandez combined for 169 catches, 2,237 yards, and 24 touchdowns. So, yeah, I think the tight end is a pretty big component of the Bill O'Brien offense, and it's always kind of been a big component of the Patriots offenses. Oh, and the other one. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
do
no,
you
go.
Do you want to talk about those guys first, or should I
No,
mention...
go for it. No, you go. You go. You are
And
a
then-
guest.
Then I'm a University of Wisconsin guy, so I got to throw in a plug for Jake Ferguson, who, was the Badgers' best pass catcher for at least 2 of his seasons there. Granted, that's not saying a lot. They didn't have a lot of firepower at wide receiver, and their passing game was kind of terrible overall. But he was the go-to guy on like 3rd and 7 every time. It was like Ferguson getting those targets. And I think the Luke Schoonmaker pick in the 2nd round is going to throw some people off the trail. But I really think Schoonmaker is maybe going to be more of a blocker than pass catcher, at least early on. And if you look at their college numbers, I mean, Ferguson was the far more prolific pass catcher in college. Not even a question. Plus, Schoonmaker's hurt. Yeah, and as Chris points out, Dak does love his tight ends. Hence, Dalton Schultz, who might be just a guy, putting up some really nice fantasy numbers for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think that you're spot on about the Patriots tight ends, especially when Bill Belichick called Mike Gesicki a receiver. He said he's not a tight end, he's a receiver. Shout out to Hunter Henry, Arkansas alum. Love him. I really hope that he does have a bounce back year, and I hope that they both go off. And it's very possible when you look at the state of the wide receiver room in New England. I mean, they got rid of Jacoby Myers. They brought in Juju, but if you look at his yards per route run year after year after year, they've consistently gone down. Then you've got Tyquan Thornton, who's a speedster, but kind of more of a special teams guy. And then you have Dusty Devontae Parker, and that's pretty much it. I mean, Kendrick Bourne's in there as well, but who really knows what we're going to get out of him? I think that the tight end is going to be a big focal point of this offense. As far as Jake Ferguson goes, I absolutely love him. If you look up his numbers and look how much better he was at pass catching than Peyton Hendershot is. And then, as you mentioned, Schoonmaker's hurt. And it's only, the thing about his injury is that it's only a partial plantar fascia tear, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it's actually harder to heal from than a complete tear. So we could see him off the field for quite a long time. And with Ferguson's just all around ability, I do see a huge role for him in Dallas's offense. And he's so cheap. He is so cheap. Why would you not take, some upside swing on him in this supposedly high powered offense?
Yeah. I mean, Ferguson is dirt cheap. He's like a perfect guy I will take, if I'm doing a 3 tight end or even like a 4 tight end build, if I just take a bunch of them late. In best ball, like Ferguson's perfect for that, or perfect for just to tack onto a Dak Cowboys stack. But we don't have to worry about, really worry about that in season long, where you can kind of just put them on a watch list and see how many how they're gonna shape up with the routes there and everything like that. So and then looking at the Patriots, yeah, I mean, it's so ambiguous with their pass catchers, and if anybody needs some juice in that offense, it's the Patriots. And now that they have Britt, what did you call Matt Patricia? What was the nickname you used?
A pencil puppet.
Pencil puppet Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. The adults are back in the room now with Bill O'Brien, I would say. So now we can see this offense running more functionally with Gesicki, with Hunter Henry. I guess if you want to count Juju Smith-Schuster, I guess he's kind of there as well. And I want to know who Devontae Parker's agent is, because that person did really well getting him the contract that he got. So I guess they're going to be there, but I am more than willing to take a shot on athletic profiles in that offense, because other than that, they're a bunch of glaciers. So give me all the Tyquan Thornton at wide receiver, and give me all the Mike Gesicki. And you know what? Hunter Henry too. The hen house is open, as Andrew Cooper would say, for Hunter Henry. So totally in on those guys. As far as late round guys, like I'm looking at Cole Kmet also, who we know he just got paid big time, and I want to know who his agent is as well. I have to look that up, but I know with the Bears, we know the kind of dichotomy with surrounding a quarterback with weapons. We've seen it with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. We've seen it with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Now, I guess we can maybe play that a little more with Justin Fields and DJ Moore. So we're hoping for an uptick in the passing game efficiency and just production-wise. But Cole Kmet has been there. I would say I don't know if he's really the second target on offense. You still have Darnell Mooney there, but I certainly think he's in the discussion to, if he can kind of supplant Darnell Mooney in the target pecking order, I think he'll definitely get some nice ROI from where you have to draft him. How are you on Cole Kmet this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's priced about right as sort of a high-end tight end too. And I do think he's a good player. But, in a run-heavy offense with additional target competition now that they've got, a real legitimate wide receiver one in DJ Moore, Chase Claypool there. I don't know if he's going to do anything, but, Darnell Mooney coming back from injury. So, yeah, there's more target pressure, I guess, on Kmet. But, I actually think he's good. So, the price seems like it's about right. And, if I'm in a league where maybe the format does encourage the drafting as a second tight end and, he's reasonably priced, I'm not opposed to taking a shot.
Yeah, I think that we live with this narrative that he has bricks for hands because he did have a lot of drops in his previous seasons. But last year, he finished as tight end 8. I mean, he finished well within that tight end 1 range. And at the discount that you're getting on him as a mid-range tight end 2, if Justin Fields is going to pass for these 4,000 yards that he says he's going to, if he's going to set all these records that he says he's going to, Darnell Mooney still has some concerns about his ankle coming back from injury. Cole Kmet has been kind of Justin Fields' safety blanket. And so I can see him returning some value, especially if they become more efficient in the red zone and score a few more touchdowns.
Yeah, Cole. I mean, I have no problem with Cole Kmet as far as his price. I mean, he's going around. The only thing that makes it difficult is I've drafted so much Sam Laporta that it seems like I get those like wandering eyes, and then once I see Sam Laporta's out there, it's just like an automatic click. And exposure wise, especially in best ball, I think it's kind of dangerous, to be honest, because I want to get exposure to other guys there. Like I don't have a lot of Gerald Everett, don't have the most Cole Kmet. Don't really have much Irv Smith or Taysom Hill, like guys that are going all around Sam Laporta. It's really just been like so hyper focused on Sam Laporta that I'm really missing out on, Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet and guys like that. And I'm looking go ahead.
I just wanted to throw a wrench in here real quick because you mentioned Taysom Hill. Can we just talk about Jimmy Graham being signed for a 1-year contract in that situation? I mean, at first it was like, yeah, he signed a deal so that he can retire. But no, this isn't a 1-day deal. It's a 1-year deal. So what gives with that? Are we still believing that Taysom Hill is going to, I'm just so confused about that whole situation. Y'all are both flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Speechless.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it and I just kind of didn't believe it. And boy, I think I've even forgotten to add Jimmy Graham to my tight end rankings. I need to put him in there somewhere in like the Hunter Long region of things, at like tight end 62 or something like that.
The Tyler Davis tier.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I'm, I don't think he makes me any less enthusiastic about, Juwan Johnson, another guy I've gotten that Cole Kmet, Sam Laporta range and don't mind taking a shot at. Yeah, just like, what are the odds that he comes back and actually moves the needle for fantasy?
If anything, he hurt, some of that upside with the, Kmet and those guys, when he was in Chicago. And when I scrolled and saw that, I'm like, was this supposed to be 1 day? No, it's 1 year. Like, what's going on? Like, the only thing I can think of is maybe that they needed a backup pilot in case, the Saints team charter, the pilot's out sick and they need somebody to fly the plane. Because we do know Jimmy Graham is an accomplished pilot. So that being the only thing, I don't know how much football wise he could do, but it's cool to see him out there just for nostalgia purposes. if he is a thing or anything close to a thing or thing adjacent, I don't even know what to say.
Then I'm done.
Better we get the nostalgia ride with him on the Saints than on the Packers, Kevin.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Apparently Adam Troutman died so Jimmy Graham could live in 2023. That's where we're at. Yeah. And then so we talked about the super deep guys. And we can go kind of even a little bit deeper because Hunter Henry, I mean, on Underdog, he's tight end 31. But even in tight ends in the 30s, in the late 20s, there's still, we talked about Jake Ferguson, but like Trey McBride is there, Hayden Hurst, I should say, Tyler Conklin, Michael Mayer, like Jelani Woods. There's still guys out there that are super relevant. And, you know, when we're dumpster diving for like wide receivers, we're really risking, you know, zeros in lineups, especially in like best ball, where we're risking zeros in our lineups with running backs and wide receivers. But this is like the range where of tight end where you can draft these guys the last couple rounds and you're still getting consistent production. So of like those guys, the McBrides and the Mayers and the Musgraves and the Likeleys, and like who jumps out at you as far as a guy that maybe I want to take some stabs on?
Yeah, Hayden Hurst, kind of an interesting one, and our guy Herms mentioned him in the chat. Hi, Herms. Yeah, so like part of it is that I think Bryce Young could be like pretty good and hit his you know, get up to speed a lot faster than the typical quarterback. He's just sort of this savant, and he's been referred to as such, I think, by some of his own coaches, as far as just being a playmaker who totally understands the offense and is going to have a much flatter learning curve than the typical rookie quarterback. And I think that's kind of a sneaky good offensive line in Carolina. So maybe Hurst won't have to help block all that often. So he's kind of an interesting one. And, you know, Irv Smith, like I forget who tweeted it, but there was like a highlight of Irv Smith making a decent catch. And like
might have been Irv Smith Sr. for all we know. We know he's on Twitter all the time.
Someone saying that, you know, I can't believe I'm falling for this again, but if Irv Smith could just stay healthy in that offense. So like he's not crazy. That's the thing. There are a lot of interesting dart throws at the position late. And it's fun to have a format like the Scott Fishbowl that sort of encourages them with a 22 round draft and a tight end premium thing. You know, I'm happy to take shots at Jelani Woods. That's another guy. I mean, like, that dude's 6'7" and can run what? He is like 4.5 something speed. Like that's a pretty nice combination. If he could just like, you know, swat away Mo Alley Cox once and for all, and you know, win that job. And you know, maybe Anthony Richardson is more of an advanced passer than we suspect, and you know, Woods can actually become fantasy viable. So yeah, there are a lot of interesting guys. I mean, my God, Isaiah Likely. If anything happened to Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely is a guy like I'd drop 30% of my fab on, I think, right away.
He is the closest thing we have to a tight end handcuff, I would say.
Yes.
And I think it doesn't even take an injury to Mark Andrews for Likely to become relevant. Do you take any of those wide receivers like Bateman or Beckham who have consistently battled injuries? And I think that either Andrews and Likely both have the versatility and the skill set to line up anywhere on the field, that it would make sense. And you could still play some 12 personnel and incorporate them in there and still have an air raid offense and not have them block. So I really like Likely. Hayden Hurst, I'm in love with him. I think that he's going to surprise so many people. The offensive coordinator in Carolina is a former tight ends coach who has consistently utilized tight ends. Frank Reich has a very special place in his scheme for tight ends, and the fact that they paid him. They brought him in free agency and paid him. And then you look at kind of the dusty running back or wide receiver room around the Panthers organization. And I think that Hurst has that upside with Young. So I love him.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest, like Carolina, I guess, has been maybe my blind spot just because I see like a 7.5 win total on DraftKings as far as their win total. Seeing who they brought in, I know they're going to have to work with Bryce Young. I don't know if I see them winning even 7 games. I think it's going to be kind of dicey there, but I look at a guy like Trey McBride, where in Arizona, I think that there is a real shot where they could just they can trade Marquise Brown too and just completely start anew. You know, whether they bring in Caleb Williams in the draft, they get a high enough draft pick to do that and figure out what they want to do with Kyler Murray. But Trey McBride's not going anywhere. This could be an offense where, like, week 17, we could be seeing like Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, and Trey McBride. Like, we could finally just see these guys being placeholders, and there's, you know, paths to like these guys, like a Kenny Britt, you know, at the end of the season, or Keelan Cole, guys like that for like Jacksonville that have had like those super late season upsides. Trey McBride could absolutely be one of those guys, and if he can supplant Ertz, you know, just getting that job outright, I think he'll definitely surpass his ROI there. But I know we're up against it here. Pat, again, thank you so much for coming on. Tell us where we can find you and everything that you're doing right now.
Kevin and Britt, great seeing you guys again. Thanks for having me. Check out fantasypros.com. Use our league sync. It's free, and you can like manage all your teams in one place. It's great. Find me on Twitter at @Fitz_FF, and you know, you can find all my articles and podcasts there.
And we look forward to seeing you at the expo. Are you going to be at the expo?
Okay. Absolutely. Yes. Can't wait.
Good.
Yep.
Well, we will see you there.
Absolutely. We'll see you at the expo. My laptop battery will not be dying. Remember at the Kings Classic, we were all trying to figure out whether that plug was working, and my computer died like in the middle of that draft, and I'm like going by my phone for 15 minutes. But we will see you guys next week. It's my birthday next Tuesday, so we're gonna figure out what we're gonna do, whether we draft or not. I don't know. But for Britt, for Pat Fitzmaurice, I'm Kevin Tompkins. We will say toodles.